Hello, this is Janet Gowan, Love Letters Live. Today's guest is someone you may well know about from a variety of things that he does. And I'm going to go right to you. And if you would talk about yourself, and I know that your professional life is complicated because you do so much. And would you say that you are primarily a composer?
Actually, believe it or not, I'm primarily a lyricist. I call myself primarily a composer because that's how I think about myself. But I've been more successful with being a lyricist. In fact, my first platinum album record is from being a lyricist.
Okay, I wanted to know about
So,
that platinum album. Can you talk about that album? What part did you play and what were the songs?
well, I co-wrote a song called "Broken Heart" by an artist named Amir, and
Hmm.
he's a big artist in France. And he was just coming out with his debut label record,
Hmm.
Warner Brothers, and they were looking for a translation for a lyric. And a friend of mine over in France had recommended me. And when we worked together, I told them that I wrote lyrics and stuff like that. And so they put me in touch with another co-writer there, uh, and we wrote this song for Amir, and the album just took off. It went multi-platinum, and he
In
just
both
blew up.
countries, or
What's that?
here and in France?
No, it's here also, but it blew up in France only. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
so
Did
which
you
is
grow up?
a whole different package of success than it is over here.
I see.
But
Okay.
nonetheless, it was, and for years and years, I've been in the music business, and I had never received a gold platinum or platinum record.
Hmm.
And there it was at nearly towards the end of my career, and there it was. So it just goes to show you,
It
never
does.
give up hope. Never, ever, ever give up at all.
That is such an important message. Let's talk about you. You just said towards the end of your career. I mean, you look like a very young man, so I don't know what that means. But
Oh,
um,
well, go
what?
ahead. I'll let you continue before I elaborate.
Okay. Well, that's the point. I want you to elaborate. So I read somewhere that your first entry into performance was that you were a poster boy for something very important. Do you want to talk about that?
Sure. Well, I was born with muscular dystrophy.
Hmm.
And my mom was the president of our local chapter of Muscular Dystrophy Association.
Before you were born, even?
No, no,
Oh,
after
after.
I
Okay.
was diagnosed with muscular dystrophy when I was around 2 years old.
Uh-huh.
So she really got involved with the organization probably when I was around three.
Uh-huh.
So when it came time to choose the Massachusetts state, they call it poster child back then, but that's politically not correct now. So now they call it youth ambassador.
Okay.
So I personally like poster child, but that's me. Anyway,
I do
and
too.
so I was a 4 year old poster child,
Uh-huh.
and so that sort of introduced me to being around audiences and public because I was pretty much at all the events and
Oh, that's what I
things.
wanted to ask you about. Did you have particular duties as this youth ambassador slash
You
poster
know what?
child?
Just kind of like photo ops, just showing up for that and with my
Huh?
mom and for local events with local celebrities and things like that.
Hmm.
And so my aunt, who was a singer, she performed at a gala that they had done at our local auditorium, and she brought me up and we sang a song called "I'm a Little Teapot."
Oh, I remember that very well. Short and
And
stout. Here's my handle. Here's my spout. Yes.
yeah, exactly. And I really, the audience went crazy. I can remember it to this day.
Really.
The audience went crazy, and I was like, "Yeah, I like that. Kind of like that." So as it was, I was born with musical abilities. So
You
I
said your
immediately
aunt was a singer. So, yes. When did you realize you had those abilities? And I have a question about a 4-year-old being applauded like that. You said you liked it. What did you know you were getting at that moment?
The just the joy of watching people respond positively
Mhm.
to something. I mean, you're 4 years old, so you don't really understand a whole lot. You just know that people like you, and it's sort of that adulation that I don't think anyone who is in let's say the limelight doesn't actually love that feeling, and that's why you keep going back. It's immediate gratification.
But did you know as a child that you were delivering an important message?
No,
Of-
I don't think I really did. I was just a child.
Yeah.
I didn't realize the magnitude of what goes into getting that message across so that you can earn those dollars to keep going and help fund programs and pay for wheelchairs and things like that.
Oh, talk about that. So what were you able to, when you say pay for wheelchairs, how does that work?
Well, muscular dystrophy has always supported the people, their family, they call it, and when wheelchairs were needed, they paid for it,
So
whether it
people
was power wheelchairs, and that came from people's contributions.
to
So
the
when people
Muscular
ask about
Dystrophy Association.
yeah, so when people ask about the Jerry Lewis Telethon, do you remember that?
I certainly do.
And there were the naysayers are like, where does that money go? Blah blah. Well, that's where it went. It went into medical studies, but it went to the actual patients or
Nice.
the people who needed the wheelchairs and all of the
Mhm.
medical things. You never had to pay for it. MDA always paid for it.
How nice
So
to know that.
yeah, yeah, and that was back in the day. Everything has changed now. They don't
In
even
what
have.
way? In what
Well, of
way?
course, Jerry's passed away, but even prior to his death, they had changed the whole format and got rid of the telethon, which was an institution in and of itself.
I know that. Yes, I
You know,
remember that. Hmm.
Labor Day was essentially the Jerry Lewis telethon.
So why did they put an end to it? And who put the end to it?
A new turnaround of people that got involved with MDA, a younger, group of corporates that just didn't see where it fit into today's sort of market, if you will,
What do you think of that?
and the cost. I thought it was sad because, well, along with anyone who grew up with it,
Yes.
because it was literally the end of an era.
Yeah,
That
I mean,
weekend was. Yeah,
that
I
was,
was always been trying to stay awake for 21 and a half hours.
it was always a very joyous thing to see people on the television.
It
Yes.
was. It was, and it gave you that feeling that you were helping people while you were being entertained. And
Right.
later on, cut to like 20 years or so, I ended up performing on the Jerry Lewis Telethon with Jerry
Hmm.
and doing my thing, playing my music with the orchestra, and that was really my introduction to everything that I have gone through since then. That was really because we got like a 3-minute standing ovation for a song that I wrote. And that was really, I think, the bite that I got, that I was like, you know what? This is even better than I thought.
Good
So,
for you.
uh,
Let me ask you something, going back, if we may, just another minute. So growing, you were 4 years old, and there you were with, and then what was your childhood life like? Friendships and school,
you
and
know, I
you
grew
you
up
knew
with,
you had this talent.
yeah. I mean, okay, so I was known as like the piano kid in elementary school. I would play
Yeah.
in the plays and things like that.
Uh-huh.
But I was raised just like my other siblings. I had three other brothers and a sister.
Oh.
And, the doctor, apparently, my mom said when the doctor diagnosed me, her question immediately was, what can I do for my son?
Uh-huh.
The doctor said, the best thing you can do for your son is to treat your son just like your other children. Don't coddle him, don't do anything special other than his immediate needs,
Hmm.
but to treat him just like you do the other. And my mother literally did that, right up until the day she died. I
When was
was just
that?
another. Yeah, that was the day that was probably the hardest thing that I've ever been through in my life.
Oh gosh. How old were you when she died?
Well, it was 2006, so I was like 46.
Okay.
So Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Yes.
Well, I was 46. So, you know, at that time, it's funny what happens to you when somebody dies that is so close to you, especially as close as if I was like, my mom was the center of my universe.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, she was my everything, really. And when that, in fact, it's funny, I'm looking at a screenshot of her right now that just came on. She's talking to us.
Yes, yes, I
Um,
believe that.
so I've experienced a very strange thing that happens, I think, with some people. I knew in that moment, after I had overcome all the devastating feelings that you have when someone
Mm-hmm.
dies,
Mm-hmm.
that from then on, nothing would ever be that painful to me. So it was almost like, well, you've now experienced, you know, the worst that can happen. So if that eases you towards any loss in the future, and all losses will be great, they won't be felt like that. So that's sort of how I got through all that, knowing that that was the worst. And I always said, if there's anything that you like about me, thank my mother.
Oh, how nice. Well,
You know,
but
she lives within me.
I can see that.
Yeah.
I can see that. It sounds like she, the way you feel about having been protected from feeling the pain from other, it sounded like she was in her way protecting you against other pain.
In her way, she
Oh,
was. In fact, her last words to me, I was, you know, probably in my weakest, and I begged her not to die, and
oh,
she said, "Don't worry, this is just a hill, and we're going to get over it."
uh-huh.
And I believed her, you know,
Yeah.
because she was a strong woman. My mother was a very strong woman, but she was beloved. She was like, everybody loved my mother. She was
Oh,
that person,
how
you
wonderful to
know.
be able to know that.
There, but for the grace of God, go I was her motto, you know.
Yes, yes. Now,
So,
were your siblings affected in the same way by her death?
well, I think I was a little more because, you know,
Yeah.
I was I was literally different than everybody else, you know. And I think even though she didn't really show it, I think she did try to protect me a little more.
To the
So
end.
you
Yes.
feel that. You feel that, whether it's said or not, you know, it's something that you just feel. So, I mean, yeah, and everyone in my family knew it, you know.
Yes. Let me
But
ask you something about your work life and your um yes, your performing life.
mhm.
What was the most, would you say, like the most memorable thing that ever happened to you?
There have been lots, but
Let's have some of them, because I read about some of the people who have performed your works and some of the people you've written for. So you said,
yeah. Well, you know, it's been several decades of just acquiring moments that have competed with each other. You know,
hmm,
I would say one that stands out is performing in front of 65,000 people in China. You
really?
know, where we were literally like that on the stage.
So you've traveled
And
all over.
oh yeah, we've traveled. My brother and I, who is my was you know my singing partner,
Is that right?
we have pretty much done every charity there is
Hmm.
around the world. You know, and that's been a gratifying experience as well. And along the way, we met lots and lots of great people, celebrities, and who have become our friends, and
Hmm.
you know, incredible human beings, changing the lives of everyone on the planet. And it's been a wild ride. It really has. And you know, growing up in Worcester, Massachusetts, you don't really think that your life is going to be that explosive, you know, until you remove yourself from that sort of bubble.
How do you
And
mean?
then, well, I mean, so once you leave the area that you grew up, where everything is sort of, you know, it's within your immediate circle, and
Hmm.
nothing really looks large. It's just sort of you're in it.
Hmm.
Then you step outside of that, which I did when I graduated from high school. I went to the University of Arizona,
Mhm.
which was clear across the country, and I didn't know anybody.
What made you choose that for college?
A friend of mine was doing his master's there.
Uh-huh.
A junior year, I went out to visit him at the university. He was also in a wheelchair. He also had muscular dystrophy.
Mhm.
And I just loved the campus. I loved
Nice.
the freedom of being out there. It was extremely accessible. So that was one of the colleges I applied to,
Mhm.
and I got accepted. So I moved there, and as was going to be a special ed teacher, that was my goal.
Mhm.
And I just ended up getting totally involved in the music department. So I kind of switched my major, and they had an incredible recording studio there, state of the art. And I found myself recording a lot of my songs and meeting musicians, and I ended up making an album there that was fully orchestrated, that
Wow.
my dad financed because he is a big supporter of mine.
Nice.
And then I got the word that I was going to be a guest on the Jerry Lewis Telethon.
Mhm.
So they actually interviewed David Hartman from Good Morning America, did a whole piece on me in New York, and they featured that along with my live performance on the Jerry Lewis Telethon that first year in 1982.
So how did you get
And
selected to be on the Jerry Lewis Telethon? You must
well,
have known already. And
I'm sorry, what was that question?
how did you get selected to be on the Jerry Lewis Telethon?
Very easily. When I was doing my album, I was submitting all these areas where it might be able to get some, attention, and I sent it to headquarters at MDA,
Oh, I see. Okay.
and then that's how it all happened. And so at that point, things locally started to happen too. I was getting interviews on local programs and stuff like that.
Mhm.
And so after that first performance, it was wild. I brought a conductor, 3 background singers. It was crazy, that whole experience. And you can that's on YouTube, that
I was going
performance
to ask that. So if people just put in your name
with the
into
Jerry Lewis
search, they'll get.
Telethon. Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to do that
And
myself.
that was a wild ride, Janet, I have to tell you, because you realize after that just went out to millions of people worldwide, and the reception that we got was so overwhelming. I mean, Jerry Lewis walked over to me, which was unscheduled. We were supposed to do our thing and then go off, and somebody else was going to come on, or they were going to do a quote board total. But it was so overwhelming, it caught everyone off guard. So he came over and he started asking me questions, and I was in a daze. And so that was the start of all of that.
What
That
kind of
was
questions was he asking you?
He
If
was
I
asking me how does it feel to hear an audience react to the kind of
oh,
music that you write,
mhm.
and that he knows how difficult it is to get a song that no one's ever heard of before
Mhm.
to have that kind of a response. And he said that he knew that it wasn't because I was in a wheelchair; it was because of the song that I wrote.
Sure.
And and I was sort of just, the only reason why I know all this is because I've been, I've seen the video ad nauseum times, and in that moment, it was sort of like, wah, 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 wah. You just
Uh-huh.
it's all in a daze. Because, I was 20 years old,
Yes. So that
and it
was a
was
long
just,
time ago. I have a question about that because times have changed so drastically in
yeah.
performance and what you can. So you had to kind of follow some kind of a process to get yourself seen, right?
Yeah, well,
In those days. But now, how have things changed with social media and the whole world of getting in touch with a gajillion people with one flick of a button?
that's a good question. It is literally a completely different industry than it was back in the day when I was pursuing it.
Easier,
Completely.
easier to manipulate and to maneuver.
Easier and more difficult. So both.
I could say how it's more difficult because I have some
Yeah.
thoughts about that too. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, on the one hand, you can become an overnight sensation with a YouTube video.
Right.
Virtually go from unknown to, mega popular.
Yes.
Obviously, we didn't have that format back in the 80s, so that was not even possible. You relied on record labels.
Yes.
And that was near to impossible to get a deal on a label unless, you had all of the elements that they were looking for, which, was rare. But nonetheless, it did happen. But now it's easier and it's more difficult because there's so much. It's like an overabundance of talent now.
Or at
So
least competition, but there is an
yeah,
enormous amount of talent in music, isn't there?
well, this is
Overwhelming.
the thing. Like you now can have semi talent
Yes.
combined with mega talent, but it can lessen the mega talent's ability to get out there because the lesser talent has things that the real talent can't compete with. Even if it's something simple like looks.
Uh-huh.
Back in the day, you could have someone in their 50s make a name for themselves, become a huge sensation.
Yes.
Now that's virtually impossible
Oh, because
unless it's
people demand a certain look?
well. I think the whole medium has changed in and of itself. Well, unless there's a television show attached to it, then like you see America's Got Talent or American Idol or those more
Oh,
so America's
sure,
Got
sure.
Talent. They feature these artists that wouldn't necessarily break through or The Voice,
Right.
but they get exposure because of these
Mhm.
giant TV shows. So that's another way you can make it now, and which it wasn't so much back in the day. So
Now,
it's easier.
do you think people who make it through this, new portals last as long as what you call the real talent?
No, because if you think about it, there's no real big stars anymore. Like
Okay.
can we even think of in the past? Back in the day, new stars would emerge every year, basically.
Like, who do you consider a new star of back in the day?
I mean, it would be like Olivia Newton-John makes it overnight, with one song, or whomever, like Cyndi Lauper or
Right. But then
Madonna.
we have
Even
Taylor Swift.
Taylor Swift is a phenomenon, and I think she's amazing
Isn't that a
because she's
phenomenon?
young,
Yeah.
she's smart, she's got the talent, she's got the goods.
And she's talking to somebody.
Yeah, I mean, she's speaking to a lot of people. And there is that, group of people out there that are not necessarily always heard
Hmm.
by the type of music that they like. And, along with Lady Gaga, they're
Oh,
very
yeah.
similar
Yes.
in
Well, I
how
was
they
gonna
treat
say,
their
I mean,
fans.
right.
And they're talented, they're gifted.
Yes.
Whereas you look at a lot of, not a lot, but, you see a lot of the current sensations are video driven, or they
Yeah.
have these different sounds attached to their voices. And
I,
but yeah,
I, I have learned, I just wonder how you feel about this. So I hear, you hear names for a long time, Beyonce and Lady Gaga, and I pay not much attention because I don't know what I figure. And then I realized one day, well, they can't be this insanely popular unless they've got something, unless they're speaking to. And the first time I ever saw Beyonce was in that movie. I didn't know who she was.
yeah.
And I was just, oh my goodness, I was just blown away by not just the talent, but the diligence.
Well, this is the thing, I mean, you really do have to be diligent.
Uh-huh.
Uh, uh, you have to be work driven. You have to. There's so much work involved.
I can
You,
see that.
it's not for someone who's even the slightest bit lazy.
Yes.
You have to be on top of your game at all times. You have to want it more than anything.
Uh-huh. I
And
think
I'm going to say this.
that's a difference, isn't it? Because sometimes you
Yeah.
see people who are as talented as the most. I've seen people, in my own life and sphere, singing and composing, who are as talented, if not more so, than what has reached the top. They don't have the drive.
Yeah, exactly.
They don't have the willingness to sacrifice what they have to sacrifice. Yeah,
And that's okay though. That's all right.
absolutely.
They're they're still making whatever it is they do, and someone like yourself is responding to it.
Oh yeah.
I always say if there's one life that you've changed or touched, your work is being accomplished.
Okay, so now I want to get into a perfect segue because I'm largely about the power of letters and touching a
Mhm.
life. And
Yeah.
were you ever a letter writer?
I was, well, it's funny you should say that because I had several pen pals when I was little.
Okay,
I wrote across different parts of the world, like Australia and Japan.
uh-huh. Did you ever meet them in
Um,
person?
I've met a couple of them, yeah, actually. But that was through my affiliation and my love for Karen Carpenter, which anyone who knows me knows that Karen and Richard the Carpenters were sort of the real reason why I wanted to get into music. Literally my goal as a young person was to write a song for Karen Carpenter.
Oh, that is so nice that yes, that you had that.
And unfortunately, she passed away before I was even really old enough to do that. But to me, she had the greatest vocal of any person that I've ever heard, female or otherwise.
Okay, I'm going to go re-listen to some of that. Yes, I am with that behind me.
It's a
Do you have
flawless
letters?
connection. What's
Pardon me?
that?
Well,
I
do
was
you
just going
have
to say
letters that people have written to you?
yes. So I knew you were going to ask this question. So I did pull one up.
Uh-huh.
So I've always been grateful for educators
Yes.
because they changed my life. And I had very incredible, wonderful teachers in high school and elementary school. And they they were really, really super important for the person that I am today.
Hmm.
And I really think that educators don't get enough credit.
Oh, or enough. I agree
They,
with that.
they don't get it.
Have you written to any of them?
Oh my gosh, have I written? I've gone back and visited with them.
No, but I'm talking about a letter that they can pull out whenever they're feeling a little down in the dumps and look at again and again and again.
Absolutely. Because I know that that's important. That was important. Now, they've all deceased now, all of them,
Yes.
actually.
Yes.
But I kept writing back and forth to a few of them.
Nice.
And one of my teachers was my geometry teacher, and I wasn't great in math. And she knew that I struggled.
Uh-huh.
So she took extra time after class. She actually gave me the power to not just deal with math, but to actually like what I was learning.
How nice. Yes.
And
Did she have children?
she did have children, yes. Yeah.
Do you know where
Her
they
name
are?
was Mrs. Stead.
Pardon?
And I wrote to her until she died. She was 94 years
Oh,
old, I think.
gosh. And so I'm sure her children have those letters still.
And then her daughter had contacted me. Yes, because I was literally had gotten a letter just maybe a month before she died.
Oh,
But
this is wonderful.
I
Yeah.
want to share with you just a brief letter that she wrote to me. And I've posted it on my Facebook page, and people they love it. But it just goes to show, this is a woman who she believed in me. And I'll
Yeah.
never forget for graduation, she gave me a thesaurus, and inside it, she wrote, "Never forget that you are a light in a sometimes darkened corner."
Oh, good. And you know that. Okay.
And I was like, wow, that is so powerful.
Have you ever written to your mother since she's been gone?
No, I haven't done, but I talk to her all the time.
Oh,
So
good. Okay. Okay. Oh, I
I
want
do.
to thank you for doing this with me.
Yes.
I just love knowing about you, and I'm going to go to YouTube and find performances of yours, and I'm going to go listen to Karen Carpenter again. Thank you.
Fantastic. Definitely. I encourage anyone who doesn't know Karen Carpenter to listen to that voice.
Okay.
So,
It's so nice
she's
to
remarkable.
get a different point of view. I've never heard anybody talk about Karen Carpenter before. Well,
Wow, I'm surprised. Wow.
yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, if ever in life something comes up in your life that you would like to share on Love Letters Live, let me know.
Yes.
and come back for
Sure.
a chat.
Thank you very much, Janet.
Thank you, dear. Wonderful. Bye.
That went fast.
I know it did. That's the problem.
All right.
Yes, it all goes too fast. All right, we'll capture it again, maybe.
Bye-bye. See you later.
Yes.